Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is an interview series in which I talk to the people behind some of my favorite movies, from cult movie directors to character actors, from seasoned veterans to brilliant newcomers, from celebrated artists to filmmakers who haven't received the recognition they deserve. These folks have lots of fascinating stories to tell. For today's episode, I spoke to British director Rocky Morton, the co-director, together with his then-wife Annabel Jankel, of the infamous Super Mario Bros. Movie. Released in 1993, this very first video game adaptation was plagued by endless rewrites and heavy studio meddling, so it became almost a cautionary tale, even though the film has a lot more to offer than its reputation would suggest. Before Super Mario, Rocky and Annabel were also the creators of MAX HEADROOM, the world's first virtual TV host, who became a cult figure with his own music video show, a series, commercials, and even a computer game. They shot music videos for the likes of Elvis Costello, the Talking Heads, Rush, the Tom Tom Club, and even Miles Davis, and they were also known for their cutting-edge commercials and TV title sequences. Due to the failure of Super Mario Bros., Rocky hasn't directed another feature film since, but he remains very active in the field of commercials. In this Talking Pictures episode, Rocky discusses the process of adapting a video game without a story into a huge Hollywood movie. He talks about many of the problems he and Annabel ran into while making the film, like receiving a completely rewritten script just a few days before principal photography, or getting locked out of the editing room. Rocky also shares memories of his early career, like getting thrown off the crew of the movie adaptation of Pink Floyd's The Wall, one of his first gigs as an animator, or developing the cyberpunk world of MAX HEADROOM, or creating particularly subversive music videos, including one for the Sex Pistols. This interview is part of a series on video game adaptations, so be sure to also check out the Talking Pictures episodes with Double Dragon director Jim Yukich, with Street Fighter writer-director Steven D'Souza, and with Mortal Kombat and Wing Commander screenwriter Kevin Droney. If you speak German, there's also episode number 38 of our Lichtspielplatz podcast, with in-depth discussions of all these movies. You can find us at talkingpicturespodcast.com. So here's Talking Pictures with director Rocky Morton. So when we're talking about Super Mario Bros., I think that we should sort of move back in time a little bit to understand the era in which it was made. I think that, well, these days it's fairly common to have game adaptations and movies and games that have a very close relationship with each other. But back in the days of Super Mario, it was the very first movie adaptation of a game. And I think video games and movies were just slowly approaching each other in a way, with games based on movies and movies that sort of dealt with the whole computer scene, like Tron and War Games or The Wizard. So my first question would be, did you follow this kind of relationship between games and movies?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in computer graphics and gaming and everything to do with computer technology. I was an early adopter of all sorts of computers. In fact, I wrote a book on computer graphics because I had such a collection of images and everything, and I started to make films in that space. Using computer technology, as a filmmaking tool. One of the first to do that, especially in the commercial arena and music videos. So to me, it wasn't even a thought of whether this was going to merge. It was like it had already merged in my mind. That there isn't much difference in my mind between a video game and certain types of movies anyway.
Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like the next step for you in that sort of evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, but it wasn't like a step to me. Mm-hmm. It seemed like I was already kind of doing it in a way.
Mm-hmm. I see. It's kind of odd that Super Mario Bros. Was the first movie to be made out of a computer game because, Super Mario doesn't really have a story, or the world of Super Mario doesn't really have a story. So,
yeah.
Was that to you? Was that a problem, or did you see that as an opportunity?
it was both a problem and an opportunity. And the way I saw it was because there was no story, there were just a bunch of characters that didn't really, I mean, related in the game, but didn't really make any sense as a story. I wrote it backwards as if there really was a story, and the game makers, you know, interpreted the story that was our invention as a game and produced it as a game. So it was done in reverse.
Did you play the Super Mario games at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had two young kids, and I was very aware of Super Mario Brothers. But you know, as far as a story was concerned, I mean, it was exciting to play back then. But as far as any kind of story, narrative, or meaningful characterization, it didn't exist.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people, you know, got upset with the story that we came up with because it wasn't how they imagined it in their minds, this story that didn't exist.
Mm. So yeah, I imagine it's kind of difficult to create something out of nothing in a way, to fill that world that doesn't exist. Like back at the time, there were a lot of computer games that would have been much more appropriate, I think. Maybe appropriate is not the right word, but which would have lent itself much better to an adaptation because they had a story and because they had kind of like a world that you could turn into a movie. Whereas Super Mario, I think, is more of a cartoon reality in a way. Did you approach it as a cartoon, or how
No,
did
not
you see
at
that?
all. But when you say cartoon, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it in a way it already looks like a cartoon, like an animated thing, you know, like I don't know, like a Roadrunner or Tom and Jerry cartoon.
Right.
It already
Uh,
has that look. And
yeah,
also the way that, you know, the reality of it, you know, there is no real physics in the game, or the physics aren't really, don't have much
yeah,
to do with our world, this kind of thing.
yeah. The physics was a problem for me, but yeah. So I just tried to retroactively fit the story. You know, that's all into these, you know, couple of plumbers from Brooklyn, and tried to imagine, you know, how they ended up in this world that the game was a parody of my story as a film.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, complex.
Um, I was also thinking because, well, these days, if you make a film out of a video game, then you have a lot of films that you can look at and, you know, say, okay, this worked and this one didn't work, and, you know, we're gonna do it like Paul Anderson did with Resident Evil, and we're not gonna do it like Uwe Boll did with Alone in the Dark, for example.
Yeah.
Um, but you didn't have that luxury. You just sort of didn't have any sort of reference points. Um,
No, we just invented it from nothing.
Did you have any reference points outside of the gaming world? Like other movies or
None
uh,
whatsoever. I mean, if you look at the film, it's unique,
yeah.
and because there was nothing like it before. You know, I mean, what I'd done previously was Max Headroom, and that was the same thing. Before Max Headroom, there was no artificial intelligence character on the
Hmm.
TV. And the same with Super Mario Brothers. Max was a huge success, but Super Mario was a disaster, a failure.
Mm.
But you know, I think it was a glorious failure. You know, the main reason it was a failure though was because of the rewrites, the constant rewrites,
Hmm.
because of the nervousness of the producers and the
Hmm.
fear that they wouldn't be able to sell such a dark movie. So it was constantly I used to call it de-written. It was constantly de-written. So the bar was lowered and lowered and lowered. And also with each writer that came on, because there was a complexity to the story, they didn't really get it, and they were just like writing series of gags in the end. You know, like you know, like the guys running into a sheet of plate glass. I mean, I had to shoot that, but I knew it was just stupid.
Mm.
But I was forced to shoot it. And there were all these gags in it, and it was just embarrassing to me to have to shoot this shit. But I did, because I thought in some naive way I could somehow save the movie in the edit, but it was impossible because the script was so different from our original story, which actually made sense. I mean, obviously, we're not going to go in to make a movie that doesn't make sense, even though we ended up with a movie that didn't make sense.
Yeah, I know the scene with the plate of glass is a real groaner. That's like, oh,
Oh,
okay.
it's just ridiculous. I mean, and I was literally forced to shoot it.
Mm. So, what was your original vision for the film, and what were the parts that sort of were forced upon you that you just had to add or had to deal with?
Well, I wanted to make an emotional film about the relationship between two brothers, and the older brother, they lost their parents, and the older brother had to bring up the younger brother, had to be the mother and the father to Luigi. And I thought that was tender and that was interesting and that would relate to a lot of people. And then, eventually Luigi had to think for himself and he had to break his bond with his elder brother. And even though that upset Mario and he was, distraught by that, he had to let Luigi go. And that was the heart of the movie. And that was the movie I wanted to make. And Dick Clements and Ian LaFrenne were the only writers that we worked with that understood that and got that and wrote that. And it was a beautiful story. And it was an adult theme as well. We wanted it to appeal to the whole family. We wanted the parents to enjoy this as well as the kids enjoying the color and the action and all the rest of it. We wanted the whole family to enjoy this film. And we obviously wanted it to make sense because we're rational human beings. But when you're in a situation, a week from principal photography and you've got all the sets built and you've cast the entire movie and the script comes in and it doesn't make any sense, what do? Do you walk away and never work again in Hollywood? Because you walked away from this huge movie and left them in the shit? Or do you soldier on and think you can somehow fix it as you're going on, which naively and unfortunately we did. So, that's what happened. But the movie we wanted to make, what was this family film that was a little bit dark, I have to admit. They go into this world that was the parallel universe that was like our world, but it evolved dinosaurs and they had a dinosaur mentality in the world that they built, a bit like, certain aspects of our world are like that. And, I thought that was interesting. And the script was great, and all those actors, all those great actors read that script and signed on because that script was so good. And then there were all sorts of, nervous tensions and, everybody kind of like it's just absolute panic because they needed more money to finish the film, and all the studios were saying, the script is too dark. So then it got de-written, de-evolved.
What's the percentage we would say? What's left of your original vision of your film that you wanted to make?
In the script, probably 40%.
Oh, okay.
And in the visuals, the visualization, probably 60%.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's hard to say really in percentages because there are a lot of other factors involved, like being locked out of the editing room. Just that alone made it very difficult, and the mess that they got into in the edit because the script, the what we were filming didn't match anything because I was desperately trying to rewrite it and make it better. So it got very, very confusing and very messy.
So that would have been one of my questions too. So you weren't involved in the post-production process at all.
Well, I tried. And I tried to convince the editor to use digital technology to edit it so we could move faster, but he insisted on using film. He didn't know how to use, you know, he didn't know how to use digital editing. He was old school. And I kept saying, just get a kid in here that knows how to do this, and I'll be able to edit this stuff like that. But it was all looking through the negative, strips of film like this, strips of films hanging in bins. Like we've been doing for years. But the new technology was, for a film that big, there were 5 units shooting simultaneously. So the amount of material that was coming in every day was colossal, and they were cutting strips of film together and sticking it together with Scotch tape. I mean, that slowed it down. And then for me to come in and say, no, that doesn't work. Okay, we're going to have to re-edit. They had to peel all the tape back off the film and recut, and then find all the trims, stick all the trims back together on the film, and then start to re-edit it. And that's just the picture. The sound is even more complicated. So, I'd go in the trailer every night after a hard day's work, supervising 5 units, and then try and edit this film in this, snail pace, which I wasn't used to, because I'm used to cutting commercials digitally by then. And it was, and then all day long, the producers would come in while I was shooting and then edit it all back again. So I'd come in again the next night, and it would all be put back together. I said, well, what's happened? And they said, well, the producers want it like this and want it like that. I said, well, no, it's got to be like this. And then, in the end, it was pointless. And I just had to let them, tape it together. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you think that was because they were so nervous because also they didn't have any kind of reference point what this film would be?
Yeah. It was a combination of 3 things. A combination of not really understanding what the fuck I was doing, what the fuck this whole shit was all about, that it was a video game, and I was trying to do something really imaginative and different, and, and complete fear of the industry, that they were all saying that the script's too dark and we're not going to give you any we're not going to invest in your movie. And 3, them thinking that because they were looking at the dailies and seeing these visuals that had never seen anything like it before, thinking this is going to be the biggest hit ever, like really excited at the same time as completely nervous and in complete fear. It was mad. It was madness. It was madness.
Well, in a way, it's a miracle that actually there is a finished movie from that kind of experience.
Yeah, it really is. The behind the scenes movie would be a much better film.
So were you involved in the music selection?
Oh my God! They tried to get McCartney. I said, Paul McCartney?
What?
You must be joking. Oh God, it was no, I didn't have anything to do with the music. I gave them all sorts of suggestions. I wanted Sonic Youth to do a song, and I wanted it to be a whole sort of post-punk, new wave kind of a more electronic sound. I wanted people like Eno to be involved and stuff like that, but they didn't even know who these people were. And if they'd heard the music, they would just be gagging that this stuff is just really bad music. Their tastes were really prosaic, and it was just the music was impossible. It was impossible. Just the music alone could have been an incredible part of it.
Yeah, well, instead they got Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and the Roxette theme song and everything. So yeah.
yeah. It didn't have what anything.
Did you have anything to do with Alan Silvestri's score?
Yeah, I went along to it, but the producers were there again, and all my I tried to strip it down and make it, and he had a full fucking orchestra there, playing it to the picture that didn't make any sense to anybody. And I tried to strip it down, but nobody
Mm,
was interested in that. It's finding an instrument that would be like Luigi's instrument and an instrument that would be Mario's instrument. And then, trying to find electronic landscapes for it. But of course, again, I didn't have enough control to be able to get that across.
hmm Do you feel when you look at it from today's perspective, that you could have done anything differently? Like you could have fought more for certain elements, or you could have just, as you
I should
said,
have
maybe
walked
walked
away.
away.
I should have walked away. There was one phone call. I was in Carolina, building the sets, finishing them off, and Annabel was in Hollywood casting some of the smaller roles. And we had one phone. The script came in, and we both read it, and we had this one phone call. Sorry, where we said to each other, "That's it. We just got to walk. It's just ridiculous." And then we had this deeper conversation about, well, we want to continue to make other films. We don't want to get a reputation for, for doing this, walking away from something that's, just about to first day of principal photography, go into principal photography. And in the end, we said, well, maybe we can save it as we're shooting. And, apart from Max Headroom and DOA, I mean, it was like we didn't have that much experience as feature filmmakers, and I mean, it was Dennis Hopper that said to me, he said, Rocky, if it's not on the page, it's not on the screen. Because I would explain to him the backstory and the original script and all the rest of it. And he said, Rocky, if it's if it's not on the page, it's not on the screen. And that was sort of halfway through shooting the film, and then I realized, he's absolutely right.
Mm,
You got to put it all in the script for that kind of film. I mean, you can
mhm,
do other films where you have great actors and you can improv and shoot lots of coverage and put it together. If it's that kind of story and that kind of thing. But for an action film, of this sort, for action adventure, you really have to nail the script before you go into shooting
mm,
for that genre.
yeah.
And most writers will tell you that's action adventure is one of the most difficult genres to pull off.
hmm I guess it's kind of hard to find the balance for that kind of story. Um,
Yeah, because you've got to have a through line. You've got to have character development. You've got to have the adventure. You've got to have the
mm,
action. You've got to have comedy. You've got to have it all, and it's all got to make sense, and it's all
mm,
got to flow. It's really hard, and I think these, I have the opposite view of Scorsese as these Marvel films. I think these Marvel films are absolutely incredible.
mm,
They really are amazing pieces of filmmaking because I know how difficult that is,
mm.
and they really pull it off. Scorsese's just been making the same film over and over. He's complaining about Marvel films, which are truly inventive masterworks of art and invention.
Yeah. Well, that's a much bigger discussion, I guess, about the current state of cinema and everything. But yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, in terms of the creativity and the just the accomplishment, the technical accomplishment of
Yeah,
telling a story that sort of pulls people into the world. Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. It's really hard to do, and they do it. It's great. But their scripts are
mhm,
so tight, and they work so hard on those scripts before they go into shooting.
But I think that's one of the biggest joys of the Super Mario film is the world that it portrays.
Yeah.
Like I find it so exciting to just watch the world, and I don't even pay that much attention to the story or to the dialogue, because I always feel, okay, there's something going on in the background. Okay, there is some kind of idea, the whole design of it, like the Cooper campaign posters where you have Dennis Hopper with a chainsaw on one poster and the other one where he's kissing a kid, re-elect Cooper.
Right.
So I think in that sense, it's a really fully developed world that I would love to see more of. I would love to dive into and sort of explore in a much deeper fashion.
Yeah, well, there was a lot more of that going on in the original script. It had a lot of commentary on the politics of the time and society and Americana culture, American culture. But that got kind of glossed over and lost a bit. Well, totally. But you saw it there with the, Cooper and the chainsaw and kissing the baby. It's like, yeah, you saw little elements of it in there, and all the vehicles were electric because it was forbidden to use ancestors' ground up bones as processed into gasoline for gasoline engines.
Okay.
That's why everything was electric. See, that didn't even, there was a scene in the movie where that was explained, but it didn't get in there.
Oh, it's too bad because it has all these things
Yeah.
at the edges in a
Yes.
way, things
You're
right
absolutely
at the
right.
edges of the frame. Also, these little jokes with Cooper, sort of where he orders the pizza and he's like really getting mad because he doesn't get his pizza on time. It's kind of like always there's a very fun way of turning things upside down in a way. I mean, he's like you have this scene where Spike and Iggy where they say he's an oppressor of the proletariat and a dictator, and he says guy in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Where have we seen that before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
That's very topical in a way. And then he has problems ordering a pizza. So this. So I mean, it's a stupid question when I say how did you feel about the negative reaction, but
I was
sort of
surprised.
how did you deal with the negative reaction to the film?
I was surprised actually. They really went for it. And I think what was at the base of it all was the fact that mums and dads, which most of the journalists were at the time, were really couldn't understand why their kids were obsessed with these video games and spending so much time playing video games. And there really was a strong movement to try and, deal with the problem of video games and the amount of time that kids were playing them. So there was already this anger. And then for the arrogance of Hollywood in their minds, the arrogance of Hollywood then to try and turn this piece of shit that's ruining our kids' lives into a movie, and then we have to drag our kids to the movies to watch it again on the big screen is like a complete insult to us and American families. And I think that's how a lot of journalists kind of saw it,
Mm.
And I think we were just the brunt of it all, and we were the whipping boys for it. I think if it had come out, maybe a few years later or earlier or something, I don't know, it would have been different, but it was just right at that moment.
Mm. Yeah, I guess in a way
Raw
also because you were
nerve.
the first.
Yeah, we were the first, and it's never good to be the first in anything.
Mm.
Don't invent anything. Just copy other people's ideas, and you'll be much more successful. Don't be an original. That's what I tell. That's what I tell versioning filmmakers that I meet. Steal. It's easier, and you'll be more successful.
Yeah, it's true. It's like also in music, the pioneers are usually the ones that aren't in the history books. It's usually somebody who sort of takes that and sort of does
Yeah,
something else with it, and then, the pioneers or the originators are usually forgotten in a way.
that's right. I mean, steal Delta blues and turn it into British pop rock, you know?
Mm. So, I mean, there have been quite a few video game and computer game adaptations since Super Mario Brothers. Did you follow any of them? Did you watch them and see how they were doing?
Uh, Not really. I kind of lost interest in the whole thing after the humiliation of the project.
Hmm.
Um, and I put all my energies into making TV commercials and building a commercial production company. Um, and I've been developing scripts and stories and stuff, but the whole idea of doing a Hollywood movie, with Hollywood producers and all the rest of it, just doesn't really appeal to me. But
Hmm.
I'm still a filmmaker. I'm still an artist. I paint, I sculpt,
Hmm.
and I make these little films called commercials, which I enjoy doing. And so and I have got other projects going, but the big Hollywood film after that doesn't appeal.
Hmm. I see. Did you have any other projects in the pipeline back then that
Loads, loads. The phone stopped ringing.
mm,
It literally did. I mean, it's a cliche, but it did. You know,
mm,
CAA fired us, and my agent. We were fired because. But what happened was we came back to LA after the film. What stage was it at now? I can't remember. But anyway, we were back in LA, and there was this article written, and it was in the calendar section of the LA Times, which is the industry section of the LA Times. And I think Dennis Hopper had a lot to do with it. And it was just a big, like, what a disaster this film was, and how out of control the directors were.
mm,
And it was all their fault, and it was just a mess, and blah, blah, and blah, and this, that, and the other. And, you know, and the CAA, the agency, read this article and then, literally fired us, dropped us. And then the phone just didn't ring. It was like couldn't get meetings. It was like it was just over.
hmm. Crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy business.
It kind of reminded me of the story of Heaven's Gate, the Michael Cimino film, where also
Yeah,
just at one point there was an article where they said, "Oh, the production is out of control,
yeah,
and this is gonna be the worst movie ever," and the kind of thing that journalists usually write.
yeah,
And from that point on, I think that it was an uphill battle to just
yeah.
deliver a movie that people would want to see because everybody was waiting for it to fail.
And it's such a beautiful film.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I know, but I didn't get a sex change. It didn't drive me that crazy.
Well, I mean, Evansgate got rehabilitated, I guess. Got some recognition like 20 or 30 years later. And I think Super Mario is also getting some attention
Yeah,
these days, with the guys from the fan page who are trying to do this extended cut.
right.
Um,
Well, the irony is that a lot of people that I meet now that I guess are in their 30s, really. Um, when they were kids and saw the film, they literally come up to me and say, "Rocky, this is my favorite film from when I was a kid," and I've had that so often. They just thought that it was the most incredible film ever.
mhm.
So there was something there that these kids were picking up on, but adults weren't.
Mm,
But I think kids were picking up on something. Um, you know, like you were saying, the essence of it, the stuff that's happening on the edges.
mhm. Yeah, so maybe there'll be some kind of new appreciation for the movie, even though it's not entirely what you intended, but still, I mean, I'm also hoping that the podcast we're making and the article we're doing, that this will also bring people to, give it another look and just see what you've been trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to go back a little bit because you were already saying you were starting out with music videos and animations and everything. So if you got a little bit more time left, then I'd like to talk about the early stages of your career because I feel that a lot of that has to do with what ended up in Super Mario Brothers. But first of all, can you tell me a little bit about your background? I mean, how did you got interested in animation? How did you become a music video director?
Well, what happened is my whole as a kid, I was always painting and drawing and sculpting, making little characters and doing all sorts of creative stuff like that. And I came from an English working class background, so my future was like either join the army or work in a factory, And then at school, I was in the school library one day, and I looked at this section called Further Education. It was a shelf about 5 feet long with a few little pamphlets in there. And one of the pamphlets was art school, and I didn't even know art schools existed. And then I read this pamphlet, and it was like, you can go to art school, you can like draw and paint, and the government will pay for this to happen after you leave school. And so I told my art teacher, and he said, well, you've got to get a portfolio together. And I did that. And I went to art school, and I wanted to be a painter and a sculptor. And then after my foundation year, I started to look at painting schools and other types of schools that did sculpture and everything. And I came across this one art school, and it had an animation course. And I think they'd found it very difficult to get students involved in animation because one, it's really hard, back in the day before computers, you had to draw every frame, and you had to be able to draw or you had to be able to somehow create stuff, in front of a rostrum camera frame by frame. And it was laborious. And I was sort of fascinated by the technology of it, when they showed me the camera, the rostrum camera and everything. And I said, well, I'll give it a year. I'll try, I'll see what I can do. See if I can do something with this, whatever, this animation thing. So I did. And then once I started to see my work emerge as a moving image, not static, putting layers and layers together on multiple drawings or tabletop stuff, which is what I did as well. Or even I did it with the students, with human beings. I got them out in the park, and I did one frame at a time and moved them one frame at a time, freezing cold English winters. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the process of animation. And then I left art school and moved to London and tried to get a job in animation, and I got a job with Pink Floyd doing the Wall film, all the hammers, those hammers and everything, and the building the bricks and all that stuff, and then they fired me because I was kind of disruptive.
How so?
Because I love Syd Barrett, and the guy that started the Pink Floyd,
Yeah.
and I was always making snide comments about Syd Barrett and stuff. Anyway, they fired me, and I thought, fuck them, I'm going to start my own company, which I did, and I'd saved £200 from Pink Floyd, and I invested that into starting my own company with a friend of mine, and we started by making animated and live action mixed films on 16mm that we projected behind friends of mine that were in punk bands. And it was one band in particular called The Table. And I did this film called The Standing Still. And it used to get, the audience would insist on an encore, but not for the band, but because they wanted to see the film again.
Well, the band must have loved you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they dropped me eventually. and then that led into music videos, and then commercials, and also the emergence of computer graphics. I was always trying to incorporate that, and the first time I incorporated it was an Elvis Costello music video called "Accidents Will Happen," and I think that was the first time computer graphics was ever used in a music video, and it was in its infancy. And what I liked was the fact that the computer was struggling to create these images and making all these kind of like digital mistakes, and I was relying on that, and I enjoyed that, and you know. And we were, the computer was plotting things out on cells to start off with. And then I was shooting off an oscilloscope, a screen about, sort of 4 inches square, because that's, it was reading the images out on an oscilloscope. And then it gradually got better and better. And I eventually went to New York Institute of Technology, because they had the biggest computer in the world, to create a commercial for Pirelli tires where we created everything as a CGI model. I think it was the first time it was ever done. And it was 100% computer graphics imagery in this one commercial. And then, then it evolved from there. And then eventually did Max Headroom. And then Max Headroom made this film, and that brought me to Hollywood. And then they were all excited, and I did DOA with Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, with my partner Annabel Jankel, and we thought, this is it. We're gonna, and then Super Mario Bros. Came along, and I said, yes, this is gonna be such. This is it. This is the future.
Yeah, I think that when you look at Max Headroom, I think that has a lot to do with Super Mario Brothers. Just the world that you're sort of creating. I feel that in the world of Super Mario, Max Headroom wouldn't be out of place. If there was a screen in Super Mario and Max Headroom would pop up and, sort of comment on what is going on, the kind of satirical, dystopian view of a society that is also, just very, it's not too serious. It's having fun with its kind of vision. So I feel, after I watched Max Headroom, I thought a lot of the decisions in Super Mario made sense to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it would do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was more the kind of adult world that we were going for. A little bit more sophisticated than the product that it ended up being. Yeah.
When you created Max Headroom, did you talk a lot about where technology is headed?
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. I mean, there was no internet. Well, I mean, there was rudimentary internet, but it was only amongst scientists and universities and the military. But there was no real internet. And, we created this world where the internet existed and people were communicating through the computer like we are now. But it was unimaginable back then. I mean, there's literally a scene like this where he's talking to him on a computer screen. And I remember filming it and people thinking, well, what's this scene all about? Like they couldn't relate to it in a sense,
Yeah, when you look at it now, it's almost more relevant, I think, because this world where, everywhere you go, there is a screen, and you never turn that thing off. It's just always on, and you're always watching things, and there's always something on screens around you. I mean, that's an experience that everybody has today.
Yeah. That's what I said.
The screens look different, of course, but
I remember saying to the art director, the TVs are just going to be on all the time. He said, yeah, but people will turn them off. I said, no, there is no off button. You don't understand. There is no off button. They're just on.
But yeah, it was made during a time when there was no 24-hour TV, and you didn't have like 1,000 TV stations and everything. So
yeah, it's true.
I watched some of your music videos and thought that they sort of developed those ideas that went into Max Headroom and Super Mario. Like you have the one for Annabel's brother, for Chaz Jankel, the questionnaire video,
Yes,
um, where you have the computerized head, with a
right.
green grid on it and the
Yeah,
lips that are glowing. But I think those are just light effects, right?
yeah, they're light effects, but it does convey a sort of a futuristic kind of imagery, really,
Mm,
which is something that's always fascinated me. Um, I'm surprised that films aren't more futuristic because of the technology that we have. You know that there aren't more films that go into the kind of the abstract world of artificial intelligence, for instance. You know that we're
mm,
not inside that. You know, like a film where we're inside AI.
mm.
Well, maybe I don't think people are just probably not ready for it. It would probably freak people out, and they wouldn't understand it. I don't know.
I think it's still a concept that goes over people's heads in a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know how many people watched The Matrix and were sort of like, I didn't really understand what was going on.
Yes, right.
Even though, again, it's a kind of concept that is very common these days. I mean, everybody has a kind of virtual avatar these
Yeah,
days, and sometimes you feel, okay, if they're being automated, then you would have a Max Headroom kind of character. You know, if my Facebook profile would start to do things without my knowledge or without my giving it commands, then you would have a Max Headroom version of me in a way.
yeah. Well, I think we will in the future. I think we will have multiple versions of ourselves, you know,
Mm.
and is, you know, you can cope with.
What I also like about Max Headroom, and I think that also applies to Super Mario, is there's a kind of subversive quality to it. I mean, the
Yeah,
Max Headroom show was very subversive. You had this segment where it says, well, the award for the worst commercial this season goes to, and then there's the commercials. uh, was Max Headroom in a way a kind of alter ego for you to comment on, the kind of commercial world that
most
you were
definitely.
working in?
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah, that was well, the whole world, the the commercialized world that we live in. You know, comment on that. You know, that's what it was all about. And you know, like people are, they're transfixed to the screen. They're transfixed to Facebook, and they're voting, being influenced by what they see on their Facebook pages. You know, I mean, it's just we're entering into that world, and it's kind of insane.
Mm,
And what you end up with are people like Trump and Boris Johnson and stuff. You know, I mean, that's all you deserve if if you believe this shit. You know,
mm,
this incredible technology we have to do to connect all our minds together for the benefit of the planet and mankind. It's there, a gift for us. And what do we do with it? You know, this is what we do with it. So that's you know,
mm.
that interests me a great deal.
Yeah, I just saw a saying the other day, like a joke where it says, okay, we used to think that problems in the world existed because people didn't have access to information. And now that we have the internet, we know that wasn't the problem.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The problem is us,
Yeah.
is the fact that we don't look inwards, we look outwards, and we're driven by our egos, and we're not driven by something deeper inside us that's connected to everything. That's the main problem, and it's
Hmm.
disconnecting us, you know. And our ego loves all this shit, you know, and so you know it flatters our ego and stimulates our ego. So we kind of like we leave the important thing behind, which is our spirit, ourselves, and our connection to this world that's disintegrating in front of our very eyes.
Mm. Yeah, everybody's sort of becoming the star of their own show in a way. The,
Yeah,
the the star of their own Max Headroom show.
It's so fucking banal. I can't take it. It's unbelievable, and that's sort of what it's about. Yeah.
Mm. There's also another video that you made, which is also very subversive. That's one of my absolute favorite music videos of all time. That's the Stitches music video for Orgy.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you saw that. Not many people seen that. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? No, I love that one.
Yeah.
I was an Orgy fan back when the band started out,
Oh,
and
okay.
just I thought that music video was really brilliant.
The record company was so upset with that video.
Really?
Oh yeah. Because the concept of the video, and they loved the concept, was I wrote this treatment. The concept was I'm going to shoot everything to do with the video, but not the band.
Okay.
I would shoot cables, the electricity cables that you need to power the lights to shoot the video. I'm going to shoot the director. I cast as the director. I'm going to shoot all the periphery things. And the band is going to be in this box, just in this glass box. And they looked at it, and they was absolutely appalled by the video. And the head guy said, "Send over all the dailies. I'm going to re-edit this myself. Where's the close-up of the drummer?" So we sent all the dailies over, and there were no close-ups in apart from the close-ups of them just standing there with their name tags.
Uh-huh. But the band was behind the concept, right?
Yeah, everybody was until they saw it.
Okay. I guess they were expecting some kind of behind the scenes approach when you say you shoot everything that has to do with a music video. That sounds like, okay, we're gonna see, technicians and cameras and stuff. So
shot of following a cable across the floor.
Yeah. But yeah, I always loved the shot with the youthful image. That was fantastic. And of course the director's fee.
Yeah.
And I was 21 when that video came out, and I wanted to be a filmmaker too, and I saw that pile of cash, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be a music video director.
Yeah. I did one for the Sex Pistols, which was the first. I wrote the treatment, and it was like, this is going to be the first text-based music video. It was for when they re-released "Pretty Vacant" as a single, and so I wrote this treatment and everything, and it was a discussion between two punks, one in London and one in New York. They're having an email conversation, and it was just a bunch of emails backwards and forwards about what the origin of punk was and what they thought about the Sex Pistols and blah blah blah, and how the music is relevant or irrelevant now, since the explosion of punk and all the rest of it. And it was just going to be just this text to the soundtrack of Pretty Vacant, and they all loved it, And the record company calls me up and says, "Oh, we want you to go over to Finland to shoot the Sex Pistols. They've got a gig over there." And I said, "Well, not really, because it's a text-based video. Didn't you read the treatment?" And they said, "Yeah, Rocky, we love the treatment. Treatment's fantastic, but just go over there and meet the Sex Pistols." So I went there, and I deliberately didn't take a camera. So I met the Sex Pistols, and I hung out with them in Finland. And then they call me up again and say, "Well, where's the footage?" I said, "Well, I didn't take a camera." So I said, "It's a text-based video. Didn't you read the treatment?" "Oh yeah, we love the treatment." I said, "Where are you now?" I said, "I'm in London." And I said, "Well, they're going to be playing at Finsbury Park, and you really have to shoot them this time." So they played in Finsbury Park, and I shot, and I got like 10 cameras. And I went overboard that time and just like placed all these cameras in completely arbitrary positions, like on sideways on the edge of the stage, and not really. So just occasionally a foot would come into the shot and out again, stuff like that. of failures.
Well, I think that you love you love to be subversive in a way. You
Yeah,
love that kind of punk spirit to just, turn things on their head.
yeah, absolutely. Make people view things from a different point of view. I mean, that's the role of the artist,
Hmm.
is to be able to show people reality. Reality isn't what you think it is. Reality can be viewed from a lot of different perspectives, and artists know that, and that's why people should spend more time in art galleries, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it interesting because you work a lot in the commercial field, and a lot of the stuff you're doing is actually meant to sell something. But then you always kind of sort of subvert that with Max Headroom and with the video you were talking about, also with the orgy video, and in a way, I guess, also with Super Mario, even though, well, maybe it wasn't intended, but
Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, it was subversive in a sense. Yeah.
so yeah, the only thing that doesn't really fit into that scheme is DOA. That's kind of a real change of pace for you.
Yeah. Well, because that was the beginning of our serious movie making career.
Hmm.
Because we were in Hollywood, and we took it seriously. And we wanted to make films, and that was our first one.
Hmm.
And then Super Mario Brothers was going to be this huge action adventure film, as well. Even though it had subversive elements and dark elements and all the rest of it, it still had all the bright colors and action and adventure and stuff. And we were hoping you know, to make more Hollywood films and bring in that more punk sensibility and more artistic kind of sensibility, viewing the world in a different way to, a bigger audience.
Hmm.
And if Super Mario Brothers had been a huge hit, you'd have probably seen some very interesting films.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even though DOA has that one element which I find really funny is that this is a world where apparently an original idea is so valuable that people would kill over it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the motive for everything is just that there is a really good manuscript.
That's true. Yes. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it actually relates to Super Mario Brothers. Yeah, in a strange, surreal way. Yes. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
wanted it to be black and white, but the studio wouldn't go for it. And their compromise was for it to start off in black and white and then do a long fade into color.
Hmm.
Because I love film noir,
Hmm.
and I love German expressionist films, and I love those German, you know, abstract films of the 20s and 30s. Really
Hmm.
appealed to me. Max Ernst, and all that stuff. Um, so I wanted to go back really to that German expressionist kind of vibe for DOA,
Hmm.
because it was based on a film called Looking for My Murderer that was made in Germany in the 30s, and then it was remade in America in the
Hmm.
50s. So I wanted to get back to that 30s sort of thing, and that's why I wanted it to be in black and white. I wanted it to be almost an homage to German expressionist cinema,
Hmm.
but it got watered down and watered down.
Well, you made a joke out of it. I mean, the
Yeah,
moment where Dexter writes color on the blackboard, then
yeah,
the film becomes
yeah,
colorized. So,
yeah,
well, again, there's the subversive spirit, I guess.
yeah.
But I think the color drains out of the movie as it goes along,
As he
right? Like it
dies.
becomes more and more monochrome.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, with digital technology now, you could do a much better job of it. But
Hmm.
back then, I had to do it all on film. I think it was the longest fade that they'd ever done. It was like, because because films back then are broken down into reels, so they're more manageable for transportation, and so you can only do an effect over a reel, which is 10 minutes long.
Hmm.
So the fade, I wanted the fade over a longer period, but this was the longest that they could do it in the lab at Technicolor. So it seems so short now when I see it, and it was like it's such a pain in the neck to do.
I guess that always happens with, old technology, and when you're getting used to what you can do these days. I
Yeah.
mean, when you did computer graphics back in the days, like for your early music videos, that must have been like really a chore to,
Oh,
program the computer, and I mean, they were
yeah,
just so slow and so incapable of doing a lot of things.
that's right. I can remember you going to digital effects in New York, and they were using the downtime from the computers that were crunching the numbers for all the big banks in New York.
Hmm.
And at night there'd be this sort of downtime, and they would use, and it would be like after a whole night of work, there would be like one frame or two frames of animation that it crunched.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to have a Commodore 64 back then in the 80s, and I had all kinds of programs that would sort of do the kind of animations and graphic programs and so on. You would have to let them run overnight, and then
Yeah,
um, after hours and hours, you would see one little image in a way, and I was fascinated by it.
yeah, me
I
too.
mean,
Did you ever go to SIGGRAPH?
no.
Yeah, I used to go to SIGGRAPH every year, and now it's a huge thing, as you can imagine. It's like, but back then it was just a few computer scientists would turn up at this place, and we'd be in this hall, and they'd project like a painted teapot just turning in 360 like that, and everybody would be cheering. There'd be standing ovation for this teapot that was turning in 3D on the screen. Because the ray tracing, caught the light perfectly, and the light and the shadows, and
Hmm.
back then it was an incredible achievement. It was amazing, and now,
Yeah, I had a couple of demos like that on the Commodore 64, just graphic animations that would, sort of show objects
yeah,
just something very simple actually. But you look at it and say, well, how did they do that? Amazing. With just 64 kilobytes of RAM.
yeah, I know, it was incredible. It was incredible.
Are you still following the technological advances of today?
Well, yeah, I mean, AI is something of deep fascination to me. I mean, that's the future of mankind, isn't it? I mean, it's all of our futures. I mean, that's where we're all headed. If we don't embrace it, if we don't become part of it, then it will literally destroy us, Terminator style.
Mm,
So we have to become at one with the technology. That's my position.
hmm.
We have to absorb it and become part of it. Otherwise, if there's this duality between us and AI, I know which one's going to win.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So we have to become at one with it, like we do with everything else.
Mm.
That's the only way that we can survive as a species.
Do you think there ever will be a computer that will do your job, like create a commercial, for example?
Well, I've tried to do that. In fact, I did this experiment with an edit on a music video. I got all the dailies, and I coded all the dailies that I'd shot, and I told the editor to get another music video, a completely arbitrary music video. I don't care what it is, just get the code, the editing
Hmm.
code, the edit decision list, the EDL, and transpose mine in an arbitrary fashion onto the EDL of this other music video, and that's going to be it. And just
Hmm.
send that to the record company, and we did, and it worked.
Wow. Which music video was it?
I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to think what it was now. Um, can't remember. I think it was for a heavy metal band. It was something I didn't care too much about, but yeah, but it worked. You know, it was interesting to see that. You know,
Yeah. Even though I guess when you do it like this, then the machines will always, sort of do something that has been done before, and they wouldn't so much try and experiment with stuff like you
no.
did with some
Have
of
you
the
seen
videos
those
where you think, okay,
paintings? Have you seen those kind of old master paintings that computers have done?
no.
They're so bad. Yeah, they're really bad. They basically kind of fed all these paintings, you know, all the data of all these paintings, and then the computer comes up with a painting,
Mm,
and it is painted, and you know, I think people are actually buying them. But no, it needs to be. We need to be part of it, you know.
mm,
That's what needs to happen. And the more we separate ourselves, the more we're separate, the worse it's going to be. You know.
mm-hmm. There's one more thing I'd like to ask you about, because there aren't really a lot of directing teams out there. Um, you have a couple of well, siblings like the Coen brothers or the Wachowskis,
Right.
but really you and Annabel Jankel are the only husband and wife team. A lot of what you did together.
Yeah.
Um, I think up until the Super Mario film, and afterwards you
Yeah.
sort of
That.
branched out on your own.
Yeah.
So how did that creative process work with two minds, and how did you sort of decide on who does what and
Well, with us, it was a unique situation because we lived together and we did everything together. So we were kind of one together. Um, so we never really argued, and we never really. It was just completely natural. It was just natural. It was like like how like twins have a sort of special language
hmm
between the two of them in many cases. We had that same sort of thing. We could just look at each other and we would laugh because we knew what we were going to say and what the joke was and what the end, before we even spoke anything. So it was like that. It's very unique. It wasn't really like directing with a friend or directing with your brother or directing with, you know, it was more. It was more. It was deep. It was a deeper relationship.
hmm When you were on set, did you somehow I don't know, like divide,
A
like you say,
little,
okay, you talk to the actors and you talk to the camera, or something like that.
depending on what it was, a little bit, but you know, but people want you to be in conflict because it's the they were. And it never really happened between us. But people would sometimes they would test us deliberately. Like they'd come up to me and say, "Well, what color do you want this?" And I'd say green. They'd go over to Annabelle and say, "What color do you want this?" Deliberately to try and
Okay.
you know to try and prove that directing team doesn't work, sort of thing in their mind or whatever it was. But we soon got used to that kind of stuff.
hmm
I would have to stop that happening. But no, it was a unique period and a unique thing. I can't really describe it other than like twins in a way.
hmm Yeah, it's interesting. Like you say, it's
Mm.
unique. Like a lot of the things you've done, it's really stands out as something that there isn't a lot like it out there.
Yeah, um, yeah. Well, filmmaking is very conventional, as you probably through your
Mm.
studies of films. And you have to follow. Well, you don't have to, but there is a need to follow certain film conventions. Otherwise, you kind of lose the audience, or the film can't get made because there are all these elements involved that are all like regimented, that it has to proceed in this kind of way. And any time you can break that down and do it a different way, I think those are going to be interesting films.
Mm.
more experiment. It's a shame that there aren't more experimental films that have bigger budgets. And because it's such a plastic medium as well, you can do anything with film, but they continue to follow convention, which is great when they work like that, because we all enjoy that, same story being told over and over again with the same characters, and a little bit of a twist here and there. But wouldn't it be great to have an explosion of creativity, especially using CGI, just things that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I always wish that people would take more risks in films. I always know, okay, well, there's somebody who gives you money and they want to make their money back. And
Yeah.
I think that as soon as okay, that's a risk. Okay, no, we're not going to do that.
There's an obsession in Hollywood about storytelling, which I've never, I think it's because storytelling's easy. It's like, well, we don't necessarily want to have a story for 2 hours, I certainly don't want somebody moralizing, telling me a story of somebody who did something wrong and they have to pay for it. It's like, what? So, and as we know, there are only a few stories anyway. So once you've exhausted all that, how many times can you keep, I want an explosion of ideas and creativity. And I want things thrown at me, I want excitement. I want to not know what the next second is going to be. It's going to surprise me,
Yeah, that's the reason why I love movies like Super Mario Brothers. Even though they, it's a film that has its problems, and there are a lot of moments where I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't quite work. I'm not so sure about that, but still, it keeps surprising you, and it keeps, sort of challenging you, and in a way, it's sort of. I keep thinking about the movie much longer than I do about other movies, which just follow a convention, and I'm like, okay, that was a good movie, or that one was boring, maybe, but still, there's not much to think about. There's not much to sort of look at in a way.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and it's funny how a lot of these films that I see are so incredibly conventional. You kind of know, don't you? When you see you see the trailer and you kind of you know exactly what's going on, and
Yeah.
to be surprised.
Yeah, oftentimes when you see the trailer, you're like, okay, I've seen the film. I don't need to see that for 2 hours because I've seen the 3-minute version of it, and I know all the story beats, and I know, all kinds of developments that are going to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you said that you were working on some new stories or some new films, that you have something in development. So is there something that we can look forward to? Because Annabel just made a new film.
Just made a film. Yeah.
Her first theatrical feature since Super Mario Brothers. So
it's like great. I'm really pleased for her. It's fantastic. I'm working on something at the moment about Malcolm McLaren, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I want to do Malcolm McLaren's story, and but I want to tell the story of because he's similar sort of age to me. Well, he was. He's dead now, but of a sort of a view of my country, of England, as a character within the film. So it's Malcolm's story, and it's obviously going to be the Sex Pistols in there, and Vivienne Westwood and everybody else, and the later, when he came to Hollywood and all the rest of it. But also want it to be about what really is the character of England. What's England's character? Why the English, the way they are, and a film that really explores a little bit of that as well, as well as Malcolm's story.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
Music heavy. Yeah, music. I want a lot of great music, obviously. From all the music that Malcolm was interested before the Sex Pistols, and then the Sex Pistols, then punk, and then post-punk, and Buffalo Girls, and then world music that he was interested in, and the whole thing. So the music's going to be sensational.
Wow. So how far along are you in the development process?
Well, I'm working with a writer at the moment, and we're just developing it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get a studio involved to develop it because they'll just ruin. I want to develop it myself, even get an actor attached to it, and then get, so the film is already kind of made, really, so they can't tamper with it.
Yeah, no, if you get a studio involved, they probably tell you, well, why don't you get some Bee Gees songs in there too, because they were really popular at the time.
Although that would be good. I like the Bee Gees. Good counter.
So yeah, that sounds amazing. So hopefully we'll see that soon.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see.
Okay, so well, that's about it.
Okay. Good talking with you.
Yeah, well, it's been an amazing chat. I mean, it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on that, and thank you for revisiting so much of your career in this podcast. So
It
yeah,
was fun. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Great.
And well, have a nice day.
Bye-bye.